Alright everyone, this is Tony Reeves, attorney at law, and welcome to another edition of Q&A Social Security Disability Today. Of course, today is September 11th, so for those of you who have loved ones, have family, friends, or just want to pay your proper respects, please take some time during today to acknowledge the day that our nation stood up against tyranny. I know that you're probably getting bombarded with a variety of different remembrance ceremonies or homages or things of that nature. Allow me to also extend one on behalf of the whole staff of the Q&A Social Security Disability Today family to also say to you, we remember. Alright, let's go ahead and get shaken with our questions for today. I've got a few here, so I want to kind of move kind of quick through these. My apologies, as always, you know. If I don't get through them in their entirety and you want me to have a special one on the topic, just let me know. Alright, I'm wondering if the gap in medical records will affect my benefits. First, for an initial application and for continuing disability benefits. Alright, here's what happens. Let's attack the continuing disability one first. Let's say you were found disabled back on January 1, 2006. So you got approved. Rolling along, here we are January 1, 2011, and their Social Security is telling you you're having what they call a Social Security Disability Review, or we call a continuing disability review, to determine if you're still disabled. Now, between 06 and 2011, you found out, or you realized that you haven't been able to go to the treatment that you normally would have been able to go to. So now you're freaking out because you got gaps in your treatment. How's it going to affect your case? First and foremost, let me go ahead and make one point clear. Is it going to affect your case? I'm going to give you the typical lawyer answer. It depends. It depends, one, on what kind of condition you have. Because, you know, some conditions, of course, even if you're not on the treatment for those periods of time, you're going to still have those conditions regardless. The idea is Social Security is not going to have an idea of whether your condition improves if you're not getting any treatment. The second thing you need to worry about is that it depends on how long you've been without treatment. For instance, let's say that you were getting treatment from 2006 to 2008, then all of a sudden you just stopped because you didn't have any insurance for 08 to 09, and then you started back up again. Well, if the problems in 2006 to 2008 and then 2009 to the present are still the same, Social Security might not hit you that hard because there's a gap in treatment. Keep in mind, people, we don't have universal health care, so a lot of people don't have insurance. You should either have Medicare or Medicaid under Social Security Disability Insurance Benefits or SSI, either one. So you should have the insurance coverage. So they may just look at what is going on during that lapse to explain why you weren't getting treatment. So for purposes of the continuing disability review, they are going to look at that gap to evaluate how that gap came about in making a determination of how are they going to evaluate whether or not that's going to be penalized against you. For instance, let's use that same example. Let's say that the gap is because the doctor that you have no longer takes Medicare or no longer takes Medicaid, and it took you 1.5 to 2 years to find another doctor. So they'll take all those things in mind. So keep in mind, for purposes of your continuing disability review, if there's a gap in treatment, it depends again on what the conditions you have and what the reasons are for the gap and how long the gap is. Now, let's say you're applying for disability benefits for the first time and you got gaps in treatment. Same rationale applies. It's because Social Security typically, and this is where people fail to realize, you have the burden of proving you're disabled, but they do take in consideration that there may be circumstances that prevents you from being able to get treatment. Keep this in the back of your mind, people, and I tell this to people all the time. Under continuing disability review, it's a little different because you have insurance from Social Security. When you're applying, you usually probably won't. But the scrutiny is even greater if you're in an area that provides free medical treatment or a reduced medical treatment, or the county provides it. What do I mean by that? That means if you got something in your town or your city or your neighborhood, you just don't want to go there, then you got a problem. But if it's there and you haven't used it at all, or you've chosen not to use it at all, or you've chosen not to even look, then we've got a problem. Because if the resources are there and you have chosen not to use them, then that might affect your ability when you're applying for the first time. So just keep those things in the back of your mind. Alright, let's go to the second question. have a hearing coming soon and wonder, am I entitled to be reimbursed for all the medical expenses if awarded benefits? Keep in mind, there's two prongs to this. First of all, the benefits that you get, that's money. That's your money that's coming to you. They're not going to pay you extra money because you paid stuff out of pocket. That's the first thing. However, point number two, if you're getting SSI, you'll be entitled to Medicaid. If you're getting DIB, you're entitled to Medicare. Keep that in mind, because if by some chance you pay for out-of-pockets that Medicaid or Medicare should have covered, then they may go back and you might be able to get reimbursed there. Now, here's what I tell you. There's a company called WellCare that's funded by, I believe, the federal government. They are a great resource. And also, contact the local Social Security office that you're dealing with for the SSI, for the medical portion. You need to find that out in advance. If whether or not, because usually if you've got bills that you haven't paid, if you give them the Social Security and you have insurance coverage, and the insurance, the Medicare or the Medicaid you have covers it, they should take care of that. That's why I say it's a little tricky when you pay out of your pocket. Most people I deal with are not really paying out of pocket, or they don't have the ability to. Ask those questions in advance, so this way you're not getting mad because you paid out all this money. Also, be advised, there may be a possibility that the Medicare or the Medicaid may not cover what you pay money out for. So don't think just because you get awarded disability benefits, you'll get all that money back. It may not go down like that. Make sure you go and you talk to them about it so that you know ahead of time. Do I take documents to my Social Security disability hearing? Outstanding questions. Okay, if you're doing a case by yourself, most people don't realize that Social Security is electronic. Please don't come walking up in there with a bunch of records, because they don't like that. Because most of your cases are not paper. That means somebody has to scan those documents in. Here's what you should do. First, to answer your question, should you take them with you? Well, if you got them the day before the hearing, absolutely, because you can't do anything about that. But let's say, for instance, that you're one of those people that you go to your doctors and you ask for your records all the time, and you kept all those records, but you never took a time to give them to the judge. You're going to make that judge really pissed, all right? Because this is stuff you could have given them to them ahead of time. This is what you should do. Contact the Social Security office. Tell them that you have records that from going to your doctors, and you ask if is your file electronic or paper. If they tell you it's electronic, ask how do you get it into your file. They're probably going to tell you to do a couple things. One, they may send you a fax cover sheet in the mail, which should have come with your hearing notices anyway if you're at the local office level. At the hearing level. They're going to send you a cover sheet that you put on the cover and you fax, and that will fax directly into your system. Or they'll give you an address of, I believe, the Disability Determination Services Center, which is located in London, Kentucky, I believe. And what you do is you mail your records there. They'll take those records and they'll scan them into the system. Here's another thing you need to be aware. Make sure you pay attention to what records that you have that you sent to them. And then when you go to Social Security for your hearing, they're going to give you a CD. Look on that CD and see if it's there. If you know you faxed them and you know you mailed them, make sure you pay attention and let the court know when you faxed them, when you mailed. So this way they won't be like, oh, you bringing it to us now? Well, I mailed on this day. Here's a copy of it, of my certified return receipt to make sure somebody signed for it. Here is the fax cover sheet and the barcode plus the fax confirmation. I faxed it in. I don't know why it's not here. So this way you can make sure the court is aware that you tried to get the records in and they didn't. Under that scenario, if you got the records with you, I would tell you to bring them with you at that point, just to make sure. But if you're one of those people who stockpiles records and you want to roll in the day of the hearing, don't do that, because that's not going to make you a favorite person in the eye of the judge. I'm just putting it out there. All right. What if I have a doctor? I want to see, and sometimes he has a physician's assistant see me instead. Then the physician assistant takes over my treatment. Does this count as seeing the doctor? Now, this comes up a lot of times because typically Social Security gives a lot more weight to a doctor. Physician's assistants, nurse practitioners, mental health counselors, they're given weight, but just not as much weight as a treating doctor. Now, when asking the question, should you ask to specifically be seen by a doctor? Before you start thugging out and saying, I don't want no PA around this thing, I want me a doctor. Ask whether or not, and I would speak to the doctor first and just say, listen, I'm applying for Social Security, and it's my understanding that Social Security gives a little bit more weight to treating doctors than they do to nurse practitioners and physician assistants, do you review all the documents that the PA actually does? More than likely, the doctor is going to tell you yes. Under that particular scenario, you should be fine, because what it means is the physician assistant, and they are awesome. And trust me when I tell you, they are really good. Usually what happens is that the doctors will go back, take a quick cursory review, make sure and monitor. Under those scenarios, I wouldn't say there's not a huge need to actually have them switch over to a doc. What I would tell you is this, is that if you go in the hearing, you make it very clear that you spoke to your doctor, and the doctor says, your doctor informed you that he reviews or she reviews all the records of the PA. Because for purposes of Social Security, a treating doctor's opinion is given substantial weight if it's supported by the evidence. A PA was what we call a physician assistant, an ARNP, which is a registered nurse practitioner. Providers like that are given weight, not as much weight, but they are given weight. So treat it like this. Let's say that the physician's assistant gives you a diagnosis, and a lot of their things that they say is similar to other doctors as well. Then it's going to be given more weight because the evidence supports what they say. So I hope that answers your question. Now, which is more important, a doctor, an MD, or a doctor of osteopathy with regards to treating, in terms of the treating doctor? People, MD, DO, same thing as far as Social Security is concerned. They're still considered a doctor, so you don't have to worry about that one. Someone asked me about they're a 42-year-old male, HIV positive, diabetes, high blood pressure, asthma, depression, plus severe migraines. Do you have a case? All these conditions I've had for more than 15 years. Awesome question, because there's two things you need to look at. When Social Security is looking at your case, they're looking at two things. After they've determined whether you're working or not, they're going to go to the second part is, do you have a severe impairment that's lasted 12 months or more? Now, most times, and I've had people throw this at me, and they'll say, oh, I've got this condition, I've had it for 15, 20 years, and I look at them and I say, is it long? Have you had a condition lasting longer than 12 months? And they're like, well, obviously it's been 15 years. I said, yeah, that's the first part. The second part is, does it impact you to the level of severity that prevents you from working? People, I don't mean to be rude. I've been wearing glasses since I was 12, 30 plus years. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm disabled because of my vision. I've had high blood pressure since I was in college. Doesn't mean that I'm disabled because of it. So don't get wrapped up in the length of time. If it's more than 12 months, it's awesome. But what you want to ask the question is that, has it been more than 12 months, and was those medical conditions the reason why you are no longer able to work? That's the important inquiry, is how severe is your condition. So the fact that you have 15,000 different conditions, or you got a lot of conditions itself, don't fool yourself into believing that the number of conditions and the length of time alone is enough to say, oh, I got a case. No, it's whether or not these conditions keep you from working. Because if you've got all these conditions, HIV, diabetes, high blood pressure, asthma, depression, and severe migraines, but you're working 40 hours a week, my answer to you is no, you don't have a case. But if these conditions have kept you from working for more than 12 months or more, then I would say, you know what? Roll the dice with an application. Speak to a representative if you haven't, because you might have something there. Final question. If Social Security requires me to have a representative payee, is there anything I can do to prove that I can handle my own money? In most cases, I tell people the biggest thing they look at is, do you have a doctor that can clear you? I hate to be the bearer of bad news. If you've handled your money on your own, or you've got people who've helped you out, or you haven't had a problem, it's usually not a big deal. Social Security wants a doc. And to be honest, you would probably need to speak to Social Security and ask them, do they have somebody, what else you can do to show that you are no longer, that you don't need a representative payee. They can help you out there. All right, everyone. I hope today was helpful to you. You had a lot of great information, a lot of great questions. Keep them coming. I am Attorney Anthony Reeves, and this is your Q&A Social Security Disability Today.